In this video, I want to go over your large letter and text wrap project and a few things to consider as you work through it, again, along with some practical tips on using the tools to make it happen. You can always find the directions inside your assignment inside my courses, as well as actually on the second page of the InDesign document. Now, basically, whenever you're working on this project, you're going to have three pieces on each of the following three pages. You're going to create a headline that is the name of the font in that font that you are working with. In this particular case, I'm going to use Minion Pro. Now, for your other headlines, you need to be using, again, Adobe fonts for this process. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. And you can see I've resized the box to match the size of my text. And I'm going to hold down the Control-Shift to sort of make it a little bit larger. All right, so this is going to be my headline for the text, and that's totally fine for what we're working on. The next thing that you want to do is once you have your font headline in that font, is you want to choose one of the letters of that font to sort of pull out. Anything other than just a straight line will be fine to play with. I would suggest that you find something with angles or curves. One of the letters I really love working with just about any font, I'm going to make a copy of this, is actually the letter G. Especially the lowercase. And by the way, your letter can be lowercase or uppercase, whichever one you want to play with, but I just really love the letter G because it offers a lot of opportunity as a graphical element inside your actual design. So once you choose a letter, just go ahead and type it out. Again, it needs to be in the exact same font as whatever your headline is. You basically want to convert that into a shape. And with your text selected, come up to Type, go to Create Outlines. At this point, it is no longer a text box. It's an actual shape that you can always resize. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and resize it to make it bigger. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make it oversized. And once you have it placed on your page, it can be anywhere that you like. Again, we're trying to basically create sort of a visual, something visual, so it looks kind of sharp or looks pleasant to the eye. Okay, then I can move my headline. And this is the other reason I love the letter G. It's like you have this natural placement or shelf to sort of put things. Okay, so far we've got two elements. We've got our font headline in that font. Then we actually have one of the letters in that same font just made rather bigger and placed onto our page. The last element that we want to include is placeholder text. And so with that, I'm going to take my text tool. I'm going to click and draw out a box. I'm going to go ahead and make it rather large at the moment. And with my text box drawn, I can go into my Properties panel, come all the way down here, and do Fill with Placeholder Text. And when you click on that, it's going to fill your entire text box up with all this Latin garbled text. All right? And we're going to use that as our text to sort of wrap around. So here's the three elements. We've got our headline, our large oversized letter form, and then we have our text box. Now, the next piece that you need to do is you need to select your large letter, and you're going to add a text wrap to it. So go up to your window, come down to text wrap. And then for this, what I would do is, by default, every element always has a square bounding box, so you don't want to use that. Instead, you want to use wrap around object shape. And I'll show you what that's going to do here in just a second. Okay. All right, so with that in place, you'll notice now as we move our placeholder text close to the G, notice how it's wrapping itself around that. Okay. So with the G still selected, I'm going to go back to my text wrap and I'm going to add 0.125. And you notice that invisible blue line that sort of pops up right there? That's the text wrap in effect. So you can see what it's doing. Now, the other thing to notice, though, is notice what happened to my word Minion Pro. It's saying that it's not big enough. It got pushed. The minute I turned on that text wrap, it pushed that text. So the text wrap is affecting my headline. So one of the things that you can do when you're working with elements is to say, hey, listen, I want you to affect this text box, but not this one over here. So to turn off the text wrap for a specific text item, select your text item that you don't want it to affect. Right-click it, and you want to choose Text Frame Options. And whenever this pops up, you'll notice right down here, there's an Ignore Text Wrap. Move over here to the side. Whenever you click on that, notice how it pushed itself back to where it needs to go. In other words, no matter what you do to this text wrap around the letter G, it's not going to affect this text because it's currently ignoring it. And just hit OK. So once you have your headline in place, once you've got your oversized letter, I want you to just simply go through and play around with the placement of your text and play around with the actual text wrap. Try to come up with a design that looks slightly pleasant. However you decide that's going to look. And one thing you may notice is that as you are working with your text, if you've resized the text box and you don't have enough garbled text for what you need, you can always still select it and always scroll all the way back down and click Fill with Placeholder Text. And it will just add additional text to compensate for that extra space. In fact, if we were to change the size of our text to 10 points, again, we have all this additional space to work with, so I would simply come down to the bottom, Fill with Placeholder Text, and there you go. Now to help Minion Pro, the headline, stand on top of this text, what I would do is I'd probably just come over here to my color panel, click on T. I would just change that text to a nice soft 20, right-click it, arrange, and push it to the back. Now it sits behind everything, and that is something you can totally do. What I'm looking for in your particular case is, do you have a headline? Do you have an oversized letter? Do you have a text wrap? Now, one of the things I do want you to notice is, notice down here what's happening is the text box is actually cutting into over here. So some of the text is appearing on this side of the letter, while the rest of it appears over here. So, and let me go ahead and change my view here real quick to normal, and let's select this actual shape. Now you'll notice that blue line going around the letter, that is our text wrap, and you can manipulate that. You can always select your direct selection tool, and whenever you do that, notice how we can now see the specific points of our actual wrap. There's that one, and if I pull this out, notice what happens. It affects the text on the other side of that. So I'm going to undo that. So in this particular case, notice what's happening. The text box is appearing on this side of the wrap. So what I can do is, if I don't want any of the text to show up inside this little circle, I'm just going to grab these points and pull them out so they extend beyond the text box. So now let me go back to my different view mode, view, screen mode, and preview. Notice how it cleans it right up. And so that's one of the things that's really cool about your text wraps, is you can do some pretty creative stuff. And really, that's about it when it comes to working with this particular page. You will do 3 variations of this. Choose 3 different fonts, 1 font per page. Again, the headline is the name of the font in that font. The letter that you choose, the oversized letter, needs to be one of those letters of that font. As far as your text over here goes, this can be Minion Pro, and I'd probably recommend that you do that. It's going to make it a little bit easier to work with. And again, if you need to manipulate the actual text wrap, use your direct selection tool, the white arrow tool, and you can see all those individual points on the outside. And selecting any one of those individual points and manipulating it will affect the overall text wrap. All right, have fun.